Hello and welcome to The Real Deal with me, Josh, and as always, my co-host and cohort and co-friend in many ways, Charles Hobby. Charles, how are you?
Last names? Whoa. Whoa.
Want me to dial back a little bit?
No, that's okay. It was going to come out sooner or later.
I'm Josh Landis.
Oh, there we go.
You're Charles Hobby.
We're even.
Let's just cut to the chase, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And Facebook message me if they want to. I don't care. I'm ready for anything.
We're not having a laugh with this. This is serious, so I'm affixing my name to it, and I do it with pride. And I have nothing to hide. I have no embarrassments, nothing to shield. I come into this as open, yea, as the daylily come dawn.
That was beautiful.
Yeah, I'm a beautiful man.
Well, we'll wait for the response after they find you on Facebook. Actually, they can't find you on Facebook. No, they can now.
No, they can't.
Sorry, I went one way, went back the other way, but yeah, you're now on as Josh Landis.
Well, no, I have that's my beard Facebook profile for work, but I still have the existent Bosch Fandy's Facebook handle, which continues to evade the fascist-like thought police at Facebook.
I was gonna do that, but I don't know. I got nothing.
Charles, I did say the word police in that last sentence.
I didn't take the bait.
I know, but we watched some movies this week to talk about here on the show, and one of them.
Oh, that bait.
I believe your recommendation was a movie with police in it.
Yeah, you could sort of consider Bond to be police too. So, in fact, that's why I chose Drug War, because I wasn't sure what was going to happen with Spectre, and I sort of wanted to do a sort of an action movie week this week. So yeah, we did Drug War, Johnny Toe, or however you pronounce that, and Sam Mendes' Spectre.
And you're a man of action, so it fits your general persona, I think, to leap at the opportunity to discuss the sort of pulse-raising hijinks of these law enforcement types the world over.
Yeah, actually, I wanted to outdo you, as I always do every week, and I also watched Korean action movie and Aliens, really just to, be able to talk more about things than you could and look a little better and have a little more to say. So,
well, I want to thank you for contributing to the simmering resentments that make this show so scintillating to listen to. But I actually went above and beyond this weekend and saw at least 3 movies in addition to the 2 we're going to discuss. So
Damn. You'll
find me rife with cinematic lore on this very exciting episode of The Real Deal with Josh and Charles. I saw in theaters, that's sort of a show business term for at the movies, the night before.
Oh, you did? How was it?
Starring the triumvirate of Seth Rogen, Anthony Mackie or Andrew Mackie?
I don't know.
Lord knows. And Joseph Gordon-Levitt of Inception fame.
Oh, he's also famous for that commercial now, too. I was watching football with my dad yesterday, and he's like, "Is that Joseph Gordon-Levitt?" I was like, "Yes, that's him, Dad." And then we would watch football some more.
That sounds like a beautiful Thanksgiving-related interaction.
Oh, yeah. Did you have a good Thanksgiving?
I had a charming Thanksgiving, Charles, and I celebrated the movies by watching. Actually, this is a wonderful thing that happened. My family sat down and we all watched Jason and the Argonauts because it was on TCM.
Nice.
And I had forgotten that the iconic Harryhausen animation in that movie is just as eerie and bizarre now as it was then, and the climactic skeleton fight is really one of the finest pieces of movie making ever. And it is an amazing scene.
That sounds really, that sounds fun. I actually been going through my movie collection, and I don't know, have you seen The Seventh Voyage of Sinbad, which is also Harryhausen?
I have seen The Seven Voyages of Sinbad.
I haven't seen that since I was a kid, and I was just sort of watching scenes from it, and it's amazing how when you watch a movie that many times when you're a kid, you can it's been 20 years since I've seen it, and I still remembered everything, every scene, what was going to happen next, and that movie's awesome too.
Well, it's definitely an interesting thing to think about as far as visual literacy goes, when you've sort of encoded these beats and these moments, and it's weird. I know what you mean. Like watching Jason and the Argonauts, a movie I must have seen dozens of times as a kid. Like I had these shots just in my head. It was very weird to anticipate that.
Yeah, it's cool. It's weird because generally we don't absorb film like we do, when we're when we're kids, we sort of do that all the time with everything. But as we grow up, we don't really do that anymore, except with music. For some reason, music, you can listen to songs over and over again and not really care. It's interesting. But movies, if we've seen it once, we're not going to watch it immediately after we just watched it. I don't know, length might have something to do with it, but I don't know, it's weird.
I did that once with the first time I ever took LSD. I watched Jean-Luc Godard's, I know it's not Jean-Luc, I just instinctively go there now. Thanks, Star Trek.
Oh, wow.
I know, right? That's fucked up. No, but I watched Le Petit Soldat twice in a row the first time I saw it, and I loved it so much. But actually, it's funny you should mention watching movies over and over again, because one of the other movies I watched, a brief note the night before, really great.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely hilarious. Is it a perfect movie? No, of course not. It's a mainstream comedy. It's kind of what one would expect from a Seth Rogen, Evan Goldberg production in 2015. But what I did not realize, one, the unbelievable Nathan Fielder of Comedy Central's brilliant Nathan For You television show has a small role in the film and kills it. And Michael Shannon is in the movie and is fucking amazing. I had no idea he was in the movie. He shows up as a sort of mystical weed dealer, and it is just I don't know. I love Michael Shannon. He can do anything, and he was fantastic in this. But no, as far as repetition goes in the movie viewing experience, I watched The World's End yesterday for probably the 6th or 7th time since it came out 2 years ago.
Nice.
And that's a movie I saw twice in theaters and numerous times afterwards. So really just a perfect movie, and it's something that I know the beats of very intimately now, and I still love it every time.
Yeah. No, it's a movie. It's a great movie on its own, but it works well with the rest of that trilogy. I like those trilogies. I like it when trilogies are only really together thematically. I can't really think of any more off the top of my head. Oh yeah, like the Vengeance trilogy. I like those.
Well, I think there's the self-imposed idea of entering into a 3-part story. It's really hard to steer away from so many cliches that accompany that. So to see filmmakers do things that are thematically bonded, it gives them so much more room and so much more space and a much larger canvas to explore those themes. And when you have an Edgar Wright or to a lesser degree of success, a John Carpenter, bless his heart, Prince of Darkness is not a very good movie, and In the Mouth of Madness is at best a not very good movie that I love.
Yeah.
Edgar Wright really crushes it with his trilogy, and everyone wins. Can I add a disclaimer, Charles?
Yeah.
I am woefully hungover today.
Oh no.
Well, I don't deserve a ton of sympathy because as these things go, this was very much a self-inflicted wound that I bear today. But I have truly spent the day crawling out of a dark hole. And the warm embrace of the real deal Josh and Charles is a tonic to a man with a pounding headache.
Wow. I was going to say, it sounded like you were crawling even further in, but at least it's tonic, and, we'll take it light. And we're already off to a light start. We're not yelling at each other yet. We haven't even really gotten started yet, so I think this will be a nice...
so I'm always yelling at you, Charles? Is that the narrative that you're adopting for our whole friendship? I'm just always abusing you?
No, I didn't. I sometimes yell.
I think you insinuated that it was more my fault, the way you said it.
No, I didn't.
When you listen to this on playback, Charles,
Stop yelling at me.
You will hear the tone in your voice. You'll hear the tone in your voice, and you'll pay.
Well, speaking of trilogies that are connected and trilogies that are worse than, something like Edgar Wright stuff, I actually did see the final Hunger Strike movie with Cat Lips and all those guys. It was okay.
Yeah.
I mean, it actually...
I have such a limited awareness of that series. It just seems endless.
No, it ended.
I know nothing about it.
It ended. No, I think that was actually one of the problems with it, is that the books, maybe they're still popular, but I think the books were popular for a very short period of time. So when the movies continued and people really didn't give a shit, I just felt like no one really gave a shit at the end. But actually, the last one was pretty good, and I think for a dumb American action kids series, it really captured what happens when you kill people and go to war. I haven't done any of that, but I can imagine it would be bad. And I'm gonna spoil the shit out of this movie. And what should have been the last line of the movie? What?
Can you get a little less political? I think coming out as strongly anti-war might put us in a hole we don't want to be in. So just dial that back a little bit. Some wars are very good. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, well, the views of me doesn't necessarily condone the views of me, but the last line of the movie was essentially, "Do you love me? You love me? Is that real or not real?" And then not looking at him, she says, "That's real." And it was awesome. It's like these two 15-year-olds or 18-year-olds, whatever they are, they're just like totally dead after having gone through this war. I thought it was good. So pretty good for a kids' anti-war movie.
And a rousing finale to a blood-soaked series of movies.
And dude, Donald Sutherland was fucking amazing. There's a scene at the end where he like just he just like spits up blood while he's laughing and then is immediately killed by an angry mob. It's fucking awesome. So he killed it too.
Paralleled, actually, it's funny that we're talking about trilogies. I realize now that I saw another movie from a trilogy this weekend. I watched the incomprehensibly terrible Resident Evil Apocalypse starring Mila Jovovich.
What?
I downloaded it. This is a true story. I got in trouble. I fucked up one of the radio stations that I work for, got in trouble for me torrenting something accidentally, and I had left uTorrent up, and it was downloading this piece of shit, Resident Evil Apocalypse.
That's so embarrassing.
It embarrassed me on multiple levels. One, that I got like some sort of, violation notice sent to this radio station for downloading a movie, and on top of it, the movie was not, it wasn't fucking Bicycle Thieves, it was goddamn Resident Evil Apocalypse. And I didn't watch it for a while after that incident, and I finally watched it yesterday, and it was definitely the kind of movie that you can text through pretty casually because you're not going to miss much. And it was
it's terrible.
It was straight garbage.
Those movies got worse, and actually the first one's okay. It's not great, but it's like it does zombie horror well, and then it slowly turned into an action series instead of a survival horror series, and just got so ridiculous.
Stultifyingly boring, absolutely no characters to speak of, horrible digital effects, really weak efforts at being self-aware that like mostly come off as like try-hardy and shitty. Terrible movie, but the ending involves like she goes to the White House at the end after surviving this like submerged Russian submarine pen where the Umbrella Corporation tests out its horrific biological nightmares. And then the camera pans out of the White House at the end, and they're the last bastion of humanity. There's like a ring of troops and tanks around the White House, and besides that, it's all zombies. Oh, so scary. And it was a fucking terrible movie. Don't ever see it. Call your friends and tell them to not see it. I don't know. I'm not even going to Google it. No one deserved to touch that fucking thing. It was a turd, Charles.
Unfortunately, you're known forever as being the Resident Evil Apocalypse torrent. So I'm sorry.
I would have been more content with some of the very specific fetish porn that I download. That would have been a sort of classy way to go out. Like,
yeah.
Well, he's like a very picky pervert. And like that's like I'm fine with that label. But the guy who just had to see Resident Evil Apocalypse is a lot to carry.
Oh. Yeah. No, I got my notice for Inherent Vice.
Oh, that's much better.
Yeah, much better. It was like the 15 gig one too, so at least I got the pride of not downloading the 500 meg Yiffy torrent. So
yeah,
I felt good about that.
I'm happy that your reputation for being a total dick about file size is something that can be maintained even on a federal level.
Though actually, I just I've started ripping all my movies, so I was going through my collection, and there's better compression out there, so you don't even have to get the big files anymore, Josh. Just so you know.
Okay, so you tell me get the big ones. Now you're fucking turning tail on me and saying go ahead get the small ones. Well, that's really what's happening right now.
It used to be the big one. You just got to look out for what it is. They just have better. It's better now. It's the future now.
Look, Charles. Speaking of the future, we live in an exciting time where James Bond movies don't have to be fun anymore. They have to be relentlessly morbid and incredibly lifeless. And that's exciting because I hate all those old James Bond movies where it's fun and obviously unrealistic and mostly about a debonair raconteur who contracts venereal diseases while stymieing the Soviets. But we've replaced all of that with the dead-eyed glare of Daniel Craig and his joyless trek through a very long movie.
Terrible movie.
Let me say this about Spectre. The first third is so dead. It's so dead on arrival that even like the gimmick of doing another long shot at the beginning goes nowhere because the color palette of the film matches the tone of the film eerily well in that it's bone fucking dead. There's just nothing going on. There's no ideas. There's no passion. There's no sense of drama. It was just it was such a shit movie, man. I don't know. I wanted to like it. It would suck.
I was incredibly excited for it actually because I actually really liked Skyfall, and when I watched Skyfall, I was like, this is sort of boring and typical. And then the last like third of that movie I thought was really good, like really different. I love the end of that movie. I love how it was just paced, and then it all sort of came back, and we had like introduced a Moneypenny. We got the new M, and I thought we were going to be getting like old James Bond just done in a new way. And unfortunately, what we got was a shitty new James Bond done exactly like it was done before, except without any of the fun stuff like you mentioned. But it was just like the same old boring script where James Bond fucks a few women, finds a bad guy, and defeats the bad guy. It was like, I thought we were moving ahead. It was really bad.
Well, it was also eerily similar to Skyfall in that the major narrative is like, we don't need the 00 program anymore. And it's like, didn't you just fucking preserve it in the last one? Get a new thing.
I was excited for him to... I would have been excited if he'd just done Dr. No again. I think that would have been great.
Well, see, old James Bond, he got stuck in a lot of mazes and had to get out of the mazes.
Right.
And the mazes were full of all kinds of shit. And those were great. Everyone likes mazes. Spectre briefly ticks upward in the middle part when him and the completely faceless Bond girl attached to him. When I thought the sequence where they're on the train deep into like the sedan or whatever, that was it captured a little bit of the fun and globetrotting romance of the gleefully imperialistic early incarnation of Bond. But yeah, man, it just even the voice of Christoph Waltz.
I know.
Saying James. Even him could not. I don't know. It was a flat, glossy movie that had very little substance. And let me say this though, this was counterintuitive to my complaints about the movie. One thing happened during the screening that made it my favorite movie-going experience of the year. I was sitting, there at the Williamsburg Cinema in jolly old Brooklyn, New York, waiting for my friend to show up. He shows up, it's sold out. Well, look at me, right? What a cock. So I'm now sitting in the middle of this screening of Spectre with a single seat next to me open. This older woman, I'm going to ballpark closer to 70 than not.
Yeah?
Chooses to sit next to me, far from her family.
Like halfway into the movie?
No. She comes in before it starts.
Oh, okay.
She made this the best movie-going experience of the year, rivaled only by Magic Mike XXL, by responding to everything in the movie with absolute shock and horror at every surprising or violent thing that happens in a 2.5 hour long spy movie. Anytime something violent or surprising happened, this woman would say, "Oh Jesus, oh Jesus, oh." And it was amazing. During the torture sequence, she was almost inconsolable and was saying, "Yuck, who thinks of this?" And she was giggling at the exciting parts and terrified by the violent parts, and she was just the best seatmate I possibly could have hoped for. We high-fived when he saves the day. I told her it was okay, it was just a movie. She thanked me. We really had a moment. And
oh, that's great.
Sitting with someone who apparently was totally unprepared for the realities of a James Bond movie made seeing it kind of amazing.
Yeah, that sounds awesome.
Because I could sort of step out of my tired vision of what was a very tired movie and step into the shoes of somebody who was having their fucking mind blown.
See, that's it. It's like, if you can somehow enjoy the movie, which I don't really understand how she could, but you know what? She's an old lady. It's okay. But exactly, if you get into that mindset, if someone's there and pushes you on, that's why, unless it's something extremely serious, having some audience interaction is actually really fun. Like when you go to see a shitty... I don't know if you saw that movie where Arnold Schwarzenegger and Sylvester Stallone try to escape from jail.
I don't think I have.
Okay. Or did you see Furious 7?
I did not see Furious 7.
Oh, man. See, so those are the types of movies where having a crowd that is into it, yelling, sort of just having lots of fun with you, it's very good time. And I can totally see sitting next to an old lady having a shit show during this movie would have been really fun. I totally could have got into that.
Yeah, well, at the end, she said, "Thanks for putting up with me." And I said, "I can't thank you enough for what you contributed to this." It's well said. If you can, look, we're a couple of semi-professional movie critics. So for us, the art of cinema is, really more of a business. And for her, a normal person, just some, Johnny-come-shithead strolling into the old theater to choke down some milk duds, it really put me back in her shoes before I put on this jaded mantle of cynicism that accompanies the modern, professional, semi-professional movie critic. She brought me back to a younger time in my life.
Yeah, when you were 8.
Pardon me?
When you were 8, probably?
Yeah, when I was 8. 1998. That's a peak year for movie viewing, That was a good year.
Yeah, that sounds fun, because otherwise, I mean, she probably could have outran Daniel Craig.
Like, literally physically.
The old lady, was there a scene in the movie where he moved faster than a walking pace? It was fucking most boring action movie I think I've seen in a really long time. The whole opening, the only reason why that man gets on the helicopter is because James Bond refuses to get faster than a walk. It's like, why aren't you chasing after this guy? It's so weird.
Did you like Metal Thumbs guy?
Metal Thumbs, yeah. Did he just not clip his thumbnails, or did he actually have strong thumbs?
My understanding of the random bad guy with steel fingernails was that he lost his fingernails in a freak accident, had them replaced with some sort of titanium alloy.
So like the Odd Job hat and the Dr. No fingers. Yeah. Good. And the Javier Bardem orange hair. It's just like all this good ways to make the villain. Oh, yeah. And Jaws, of course. Jaws in his teeth.
This movie really confirmed all of Daniel Craig's total lack of visible enthusiasm for Bond. And in interviews, he's been fucking so over it. And this movie feels like somebody who is finishing a contract. And that kind of sucks.
Yeah, when you get a contractual basis for this movie series, it's like, like when we elect a president, he looks pretty good. Or maybe she sometime soon.
Oh boy, here he goes again.
But, they look younger. They look like they're ready for it. And then the contract goes on. And by the end, we get an aged Sean Connery, an aged Roger Moore. All these people that really should have stopped 5 years ago are forced to keep making these terrible movies, and they just don't have it in them. Like that, the scene where he blows up that whole place, again, he just walks forward and shoots people. I just haven't seen an action movie with less action and still have that many explosions. I wasn't really sure what the style was. Did you see, you've seen Casino Royale, right?
Actually, it's funny you should mention it. On some television network this Thanksgiving break, they were showing all of the recent movies, so I rewatched parts of Casino Royale and Skyfall after having seen Spectre the week before. And Casino Royale has not aged terribly well, though parts of it are still very fun. And Skyfall is probably the closest to a legitimate movie a Bond movie has ever been.
Yeah, but I just brought up Casino Royale because that opening scene, he's actually doing things. He's running, he's busting through walls, he's flipping around.
Parkour!
And just like watching the opening scene of I don't fucking whatever, the Spectre, he literally walks and shoots. So he's terrible. I can't believe he's going to be in another one. It's just going to be awful.
Well, this one was so long. I mean, 2.5 hours of Bond is that's enough Bond. You know what I mean? Jesus.
Way too much. And especially, I mean, there is something about the old ones where, and really any movie before, like the mid-90s where a man and a woman, they just sort of fall in love and we just accept that. But we've sort of gotten out of that, and I really like that. It's not really about romance isn't as, it's not as big a part of movies anymore. And if it is, it's supposed to be believable. What the fuck? He first of all, he meets up with, what was that, Monica Bellucci?
Yes.
And he just fucks her for no reason. randomly once, and then she never shows up again.
The
And
lack
then he
of
meets up
chemistry in that scene was like, that was the most like flaccid attempt at making an erotic
Ugh.
pass. It's lame.
It was so weird. And then the other girl, like she's 20 years younger than him, and he obviously there's no point in them getting together. And then that's the whole hinge of the movie, is at the end when he's like getting his little brain screwed through so he'll forget her. Who the fuck cares? I mean, I thought he was going to forget her the next scene anyway.
It did not earn those stakes, and they were not convincing.
No. And it was right back to old state. It's just like the James Bonds at least were fun. Sean Connery was dashing. And, you could believe that he would just fuck someone and then leave, and then there'd be another movie. But the way that they made the love so important without being justified, I'm not even sure how they're going to make another movie unless they get married or something, or she dies like they did before. Very weird.
Well, the repetition you're noting goes so far that when I rewatched Casino Royale, I forgot that they inject him with trackers in that movie too.
Jesus.
They're just always fucking jamming shit into James Bond and his stupid blood. And God, the smart blood thing in this movie, the tracking devices is the smart blood. That's fucking stupid.
I didn't even want to talk about all the problems just plot-wise, because there are a lot of them. It has so many problems otherwise. We didn't even have to really discuss all the shitty, like at the end when they smash up the car and they take one person out. There's like 6 dudes, and all 6 dudes take out one person and let the other person escape. What the fuck? It just is like, they obviously just wanted to make this movie and did not give a shit if it made sense or made you feel anything. They just wanted some money, and they knew people would buy tickets. Fucked up.
Well, it's just the Jurassic World model we live in today.
Yeah.
You have a brand, you pimp it out, you go home, you count your ducats.
Yeah, ducats.
Oh.
But it fell into that same trap where we've talked about The Dark Knight Rises, and the same thing where like the sense of time is so badly done where it just is like a highlight reel of all the stuff that we need to see. I had no idea how much time had passed since the beginning of the movie. Could have been 2 days, could have been a year. I really have no idea. And I just hate when they like pinpoint all the little scenes, but we don't really get it doesn't feel like we're actually sitting through an experience. We're just like watching the highlight reel. Another sign of a bad movie. Oh, this movie sucked.
Yeah. A lot of glitz, a lot of glamour, very little substance, dead-eyed soullessness from Daniel Craig. Kind of a bummer. Spectre?
Huge.
Fuck you.
Yeah.
Fuck you. This might be the best podcast anyone's ever recorded, Charles.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't listen to them, so.
Sure.
But I actually, Drug War, which was not a perfect movie. I'm going to say something incredibly racist, so I'm sorry.
Oh boy.
But Asians just make the best fucking action movies.
I think as far as racism goes, that's like, I think, if there's a spectrum to racism.
Yeah.
And I don't want to play fast and loose with this idea, but if you're going to typecast the Asian filmmaking world as particularly good at action films, I think most people can rally around that.
Let's do it.
I don't think
they really do.
They really do. I will say, if anyone's ever seen The Raid, they will come to you with a sparkle on their eye and say, "Have you seen The Raid?" And the evident, I don't know. It's true, especially in the last 20 years.
Yeah.
That
forever.
The Asian film world has produced some unbelievable action movies. Certainly, like America, I can't think of a single movie from America or England or Europe that really holds a candle to, as far as the action world goes. It's so different. It's such a different experience.
We've got a couple of things, but it's a different experience. There's a visceral, I'm glad you mentioned The Raid. The Raid's probably the best action movie I've seen in a long time. Only beat by potentially The Raid 2, which I think is even better in some ways. It's a little worse in other ways, but overall it's a really... Did you see the second one?
Mm-mm.
Oh, man. Some good stuff. But I think what a lot of, especially martial arts movies, do really good is it focuses on the strength of the characters and what physically people can do. And CGI is so boring to me. It's like, I don't really understand why watching pixels do things is really all that interesting, but watching actual people do things, I think that's why we like watching like gymnastics and physical sports, because it's really incredible watching what people can do that most people can't. And
with like a pommel horse, you know what I mean? They get up on that pommel horse, and I'm like, yo, that's fucked up.
Flap, flap, flap. Wait, is that the right sound that they make?
It sounds like you're making masturbating noises from my side of the cans.
Ah, shit. I was trying to make the pommel noises.
You basically did a flap, flap sound.
Yeah.
It sounded like flap, flap,
that was
flap,
like
flap.
The hands. Don't they do is that the one where the hands are on the thing? And
yes, they powder up those wacky gymnasts, powder up their hands with chalk, and they put on some sort of unitard, and they just fly their little bodies around with their big calloused hands covered in chalk on the pommel horse.
But man, CGI like the Avengers, who fucking cares? Whatever. Captain America, who fucking cares? It's just a bunch of CGI. I don't want to sound like Quentin Tarantino because he's an asshole, but it's true. It's like, why do you care what... I just don't really give a shit what a computer made. I know it was probably fun for the people making the computers, but it doesn't really do anything for me. But watching a guy kick the shit out of another guy, and he might have actually died in real life, that's exciting.
I don't want to sound like Quentin Tarantino, but the police are murderers, and I don't respect them. I don't just stand by when murder happens. I'm a hero. I'm a white hero.
Who talks like a black guy sometimes.
Quentin Tarantino is a national embarrassment and should be sunk in the Atlantic Ocean to the bottom, much like Thor's bad guy Loki in Avengers, because he was trapped in a cage or something, and we should do that to Quentin Tarantino.
Did you see the video of him on BET getting interviewed?
Oh, yes, that might be the least comfortable video I've ever seen. A man so insulated by money and power that he has no idea at all what it is like to speak with actual humans and why he can't do Quentin's special voice for his black fans without sounding like a complete fucking moron. And God, just an excruciating video.
Yeah. So that's why we don't want to sound like him.
Right. So what I'm trying to say is the police are murderers, and I'm a hero.
The police are actually heroes in Drug War.
Yes, Drug War.
Drug War.
Yes.
So what did you think of Drug War? Have you seen any of this guy's movies before?
This was my first exposure to this gentleman's movies. Drug War was very interesting because it's obviously bound so tightly by the state censorship system, insisting that a depiction of a police investigation be done in an extremely, the degree of heroicness displayed by the police in this movie is like a more jaded person would probably laugh at elements of the movie because they just show these like tireless, hardworking cops who are capable of anything. They can, transform themselves into, undercover cops and run around and set up elaborate sting operations and beat people up in combat and snipe people. And like, there's nothing that the cops can't or won't do to apprehend the drug dealers in this movie. And it has an almost, like I said, an almost comic element of just these idealized versions of the police that to an audience, certainly in America, where largely the general perception of the police in the creative, there's very few straight up pro cop movies going on these days in America. They tend to examine the dark intersection of the notions of good and evil and how much happens in the name of law and order that mostly results in absurd prejudices, state-sponsored terrorism, murder, corruption, and all of that.
Well said, Quentin.
Thank you. See my new movie, Some Piece of Shit That I Dragged Kurt Russell Into. 8 people in a fucking ski lodge. It's the Old West. Quentin Tarantino. Django.
Watching Chinese movies is very weird because it's so hard to say when the director's doing something or when the state censorship's doing something or the propagandistic nature of their filmmaking is getting put in there. So it is hard. And I think from what I believe this was his first mainland China movie. I think he's been a Hong Kong director for most of his career. In fact, The Mission was, I think, the first movie that I bootleg bought on eBay.
Huh.
Or was one of the first. Back in like 2000 or 99. Man.
Those were some crazy days. That was a pre 9/11 world, Charles.
Yeah, you could get anything.
Yeah.
Anything. You didn't even need the dark net or whatever it's called. Just
All
eBay.
you needed was your LimeWire or Kazaa Lite, and you were on your way to getting a mislabeled porn film.
But yeah, no, it's true. Like, it's interesting watching directors. Like, I don't know if you saw the new Wong Kar-wai movie, but I felt like that was even sort of getting a little taken over by the whole like China's great message that Chinese movies have to have in them, it seems. But I do like what you said, though, because it did have to focus so heavily on how great the police were. I thought it was really interesting that we never saw the police do anything other than police work.
That I hadn't even thought of that, but you're right. It's relentlessly on the job, a procedural.
We do not get a single glimpse of them in their real world, which could be a weird sort of downfall. But I thought it was a really interesting way to sort of turn this potentially pro-cop movie into sort of a fascinating approach where you really get nothing other than them as cops, which was, I don't know, I thought it was funny. He has in the past, he usually does more with, gangsters and cops, but you sort of get an idea of them outside of that world. And this was just like, we get a bunch of cops, we get the criminal that gets apprehended, and we're stuck with those people for the entire movie. And in a lot of ways, I think that worked. I'm not sure if that was intentional, but I liked it.
It's a relentless movie. None of it is not about the singular pursuit of justice. And yeah, part of me feels like maybe this is a director exploring the idea of like materializing a truly absolute world that mirrors the absolutism of a totalitarian state. Because he kind of gets to have his cake and eat it too a little bit, because it's so hard to humanize the cops. You're really given so little to embrace other than the most primitive form of like, he is a cop, he is good. All that he touches is gold. His intentions, pure. His motivations, honest. And that's it.
Yeah, the only relationships are, cops helping cops and then criminals not helping the cops. And I liked that. I thought it was a good twist at the end where the guy that's been working for the police because he doesn't want to get the death penalty ends up betraying them and then trying to get back in with them and then ultimately betraying them. And then the ending is fucking crazy. I don't even know if we want to spoil it for no one who's listening, but it's like, did you see that coming? That was insane.
I didn't see the ending coming, and that was the best part of the movie.
Yeah.
It was a strange movie. What I admire about it is that you're locked into this pursuit, and it is legitimately a gripping pursuit. It's really, you get locked in. It's a great narrative arc. You get pulled through it at a relatively brisk pace. Elements of it feel a little unearned. You know what I mean? So, as we mentioned but moments ago, everything the cops do has to be valorized to a ludicrous degree, and that gets a little tiring at times. But it all culminates in a really nihilistic display of violence that is the most overtly political part of the film, is the last 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And he really, as much as he caters to a nationalistic pro-state message throughout the film, it ends on a note that makes the title of the movie resonate in a much different way than it has throughout the film. Because if the essence of the drug war in the meat of the movie is about this noble pursuit to protect and preserve the integrity of the Chinese state against interlopers bringing in drugs, the end of it really captures the horrific consequences of engaging in any war where the death penalty is the ultimate device. And it's impressively bleak. By anyone's standards, the last 5 minutes of this movie is pretty fucking oppressive. So, I don't know. I was very impressed by that direction.
Yeah, no, it was a great ending. It sort of it's very quick, comes out of nowhere for me anyway, and then it's It is. It's brutal. It's bleak, and it's right there. They just show it to you. Really good. I thought it was a good way to end it. And again, you can sort of read it as, the police won, but I agree with you. There is also this sense of just sort of, especially for him to be such a main character in the movie. I mean, I'm not sure if you could say you could feel more for him than you do for the cops in a way. He's in a position, I think he's the first main character that you see. Is that right? When the car crash, you see
That's
him
right. We're
first.
talking about the main, spoiler alert, eventually the main antagonist of the film, who's this seemingly compliant drug dealer who works with the cops to bust this huge network of distributors in the greater Asian continent, eventually reveals himself to be, a single-minded criminal who has been manipulating the cops to consolidate his own hold on the drug trade and tries to get away with it.
Actually, I totally lied now that you mentioned that, because he is the one character where you also do get a small but heartbreaking part of his backstory where his wife and child die in the explosion at the drug place. That's the first scene you see him in a car crash because he's been burned by the drugs. But we learn that his family's dead. And then there is that nice scene where he escapes and he goes and hangs out with the Mute brothers, who are fucking awesome, by the way.
They're amazing.
Awesome.
Their shootout scene is one of the best in the movie.
Fucking so good. But there's that scene where they just like do an offering to his dead family, and it's just like a one moment in an otherwise endless cops versus criminals movie where you get to take a break and really get to focus on what this person is sort of fighting for and fighting against, and it really gets into his mindset, where that ending just makes it even more brutal when he gets that injection, and we just sort of, all that stuff that we've been going through just over.
And now that we've gotten there, the end of the movie, all the cops are dead. They're all killed in this horrific gun battle outside of some sort of school. A very abrupt shootout too. Man, things just escalate very quickly.
But it goes on for a long time. That's what Johnny To is known for. If you haven't seen him in his other movies, he's known for setting up these elaborate gun battle sequences. So you should see The Mission. If you haven't, you should definitely check that one out. It's good.
I'll put it on my list, Charles. And this is certainly in the Hong Kong Woo tradition of almost comically elaborate gunfights. Oh my God.
Yeah.
It was great.
I think I like him better than, what's his name? The guy who did like The Killer, and yeah, it's
John Woo.
John Woo. Yeah. I like To better than Woo.
Nothing beats Hard Boiled, but I hear what you're saying. Come on, Hard Boiled is the definitive gun battle movie. The climactic sequence in the hospital is some of the finest action directing, maybe my favorite action sequence in any movie.
Well, see The Mission and let me know what you think, because it's got some exceptional gunfights.
Exceptional Gunfights would be a pretty good band name.
It is good.
Yeah. Hey, listeners, start a band called Exceptional Gunfights and send in your demos. We'll review them on the show. This could be very exciting for all of us.
But yeah, the Mute Brothers fight scene, that was my favorite scene in the whole movie. I thought the last gunfight was, it was good, but it was a little long. And
it was a little underwhelming.
Dude, the Mute Brothers scene is the reason to see this movie. It's fucking good. And I mean, it's sort of a little better because they're mute and deaf or whatever, but they're fucking badass. And the way, see, that's the thing, is you can do a slow action scene. You don't have to have everyone running. Like the James Bond, I sort of complained because he's so slow and boring, but like the pacing of the Mute Brothers fight scene is pretty slow, but it's so well choreographed, where I felt like, in James Bond, he aims his gun, he shoots, the guy falls over. That scene where he like shoots a guy from 100 million yards away. It's like, who the fuck cares? I didn't get to see anything. But yeah, man, that was brutal.
Well, it's interesting because those two movies we watched displayed different kinds of being dispassionate. Spectre was very literally dispassionate filmmaking on every level, from performances to direction to color palette to photography. On the other hand, Drug War captures a sort of horrifying version of being dispassionate, where the almost inhuman law, like arm of the law, represents a kind of single-mindedness that is horrifying in its own way, but very effective and very a sick mixture of being very compelling and deeply repellent at the same time.
Yeah, good point.
I'm full of them. I think whenever I have a good point moving forward, we should have a bell that rings.
That's true. We could even do it in post-production.
You think we can post-pro a bell ringing? Would we have the technology for that?
Yeah, send me your best bell ring. Oh,
okay.
I'm gonna edit that out too.
What's our budget for the bell ring? Because I
Nothing.
may have to travel for this.
No, $0. We have no budget.
Okay. All right. Hold on a second. I'm gonna try something. Okay.
Okay.
I've got my trusty water bottle here. Here we go. Okay, Charles, just shut up. That was terrible. One sec.
Yeah, I didn't. Oh, I like that.
It's a little muted. It's a little muted. Let's try one more.
That's okay. It's from one of your weaker points. We can use that one.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. So we can scale the sound of the ringing to the success of my observation.
I like it.
This is a good idea, and I'm looking forward to seeing it through to a logical conclusion.
Let's keep going with it.
Long story short, I would not see Spectre again by any stretch of the imagination. No reason to. Drug War, a good movie. I don't know if I would not rush to tell someone to see Drug War, to be honest.
No, and honestly, I probably should have made you watch some of his earlier movies just so you get a better historical understanding of who this guy was. But it's true. I would rush to tell people to see his movies. I would tell them to see some of his earlier movies for sure. And I would, if they like that, they should see Drug War. But yeah, it's true. It's doesn't quite make much sense, especially from us, like our standpoint as a Western audience to a Chinese movie. I really have a hard time fitting in, like not really quite sure what to make of it sometimes.
Well, it's interesting to see films being made with a very strict production code that cleaves to a much different trajectory of statehood than America has experienced, where some of the ideas, and again, from Chaplin on, very early in the theatrical experience, people were deliberately flaunting their disrespect for authority and pretty brazenly disrespecting a representation of the law. So to see a film made in a contemporary setting that is required by a delightfully retro totalitarian regime to depict the state in a certain way, it's a weird collection of cultural signifiers to put together for audiences very used to things being pretty obviously critical. So I don't know. I also don't want to be a cultural imperialist and project my hope that he's being subversive onto a movie that may be made by somebody who's just making a movie about how sick cops are and how fucking hardworking they are in their pursuit of justice,
Exactly.
It's not my job to project my agenda onto his movie. That's bullshit.
That's what I mean by I'm having a hard time fitting in sometimes because I really don't know. Part of me wants to think he's being a little subversive there with the way it portrays it. I think we can make a case for it, especially because of the way he treats like the criminal is the one that we get the most attached to and the one we spend a lot of time with. So I could totally see him being a little subversive, but there's also, we really have no idea. And I think either way, it's a fun movie and you can certainly take from it what you want.
Yeah, don't let me, Charles, or the Chinese government tell you how to feel about Drug War.
No. I saw No Tears for the Dead. I don't know if you saw that.
I didn't.
No, it's by the guy who did Man from Nowhere, which I think was pretty popular a few years ago. Another movie with a crazy amount of gun violence, also pretty good. It's about an assassin who accidentally kills a little girl in the opening scene, and then he's like, the whole movie's about how dead he is, and then he has to kill, his next contract is to kill the mother, and you sort of watch her, who's also completely devastated by the loss of her child. It's just about these two people connecting over this assassination contract. It was pretty good.
That certainly sounds compelling, Charles.
Yeah. And dude, lots of blood.
Blam, blam, blam.
Blam.
It's like we should do another podcast called Wham, Blam, Thank You, Blam. That's all about gun violent movies.
I like it.
Or we can start saying that phrase a lot more, which I'm going to find it hard to put that one down.
Blam, blam, thank you, blam?
Yes.
Yeah. Can't put it down.
Nah, that's gold.
Blam, blam, thank you, blam. You want to change the name?
It rolls off the tongue. What'd you say?
Blam, blam. We could change the name.
I'm gonna say no, because the real deal with Josh and Charles, that will someday be enshrined in the hall of great podcast titles, and I don't want to lose our shot at that now.
Yeah, I already did spend like 6 minutes making our logo. I could potentially make a Blam Blam Thank You Blam logo in 6 more minutes, but that's okay.
Well, we can call it a featurette, maybe.
Yeah, we could do a Blam Blam. Like this episode, we could have episode titles, and this episode could be called Blam Blam Thank You Blam with Josh and Charles.
You know what? It's crazy, but it might work.
It's not going to work.
Charles, on that note, I want to thank you for another week of The Real Deal, Josh and Charles. I've been Josh.
I have been Charles, and I want to thank you as well.
And I want to thank you for being magnanimous and thanking me. Because when I thanked you, I wasn't fishing for a thanks in return, but you proffered one. And I think that makes this world feel a little warmer. And that's beautiful.
Not warm. Your thanks did not warm me. I'm going to go turn the heat on.
And all of you, stay warm in your hearts. Ha ha, bye.
We got to work on our outros.
What do you mean? That was flawless.